Yes, you should have seen it. No, it's 130. According to what we sent you. It's the first one that is 12 minutes. Oh, really? What was on your letter?
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, rather. Hello, good afternoon. This is Dr. Mero Mandara.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Eniola Ladapo.
Thank you. So I'm just going to mute.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's only a panelist that can respond to us right now.
Yes, let's respond to you.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much, first of all, to our panelists. I can see Dr. Lumualuda here. I can see Chama Kanjika. I can see Eniola Ladapo. I can also see Femi Taiwo. I can see Gbenga Sheson, Myro Mandara. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for making this a success. We deeply appreciate you for what you've done and for the time you're giving to ensure that this is a huge success. I also want to acknowledge our attendees who are also here and those who will yet join. Deeply thankful to that. I'm not the moderator for this session. I'll be introducing the moderator very soon. But I'd just like to introduce, just to let us know why we are doing this. Thank you for the honor you've granted us, particularly to our panelists who will be helping us to do justice to the things we'll be addressing. The theme of this program basically is rethinking education, jobs, and prosperity. And the idea, just as the name is also to rethink these things. And what COVID-19 has done is to open our eyes to see that there are many things that we've not been prepared for. Even the nations that we consider strong nations, obviously, have not been able to figure out a number of things. How much more certain nations in Africa, which includes Nigeria. So a number of things we need to rethink. And so we thought of certain persons, thought leaders, and those who have practiced a number of things in these areas that we'll be addressing on this particular program, starting with this panel on value orientation. And that's how we're able to identify these persons we have as panelists who will be sharing from their own experiences and backgrounds and how we can help to orientate values, which also help us. I remember we used to hear from history that there are a number of things that our forefathers upheld in terms of values. But what has happened to a number of these values, values of hard work, integrity, values of respect for other people, values of hard work. So a number of these things somehow seems to be fading in some instances to some extent. And so we'll be addressing a number of these things through this conversation on this. This program basically is brought to us by EduStart Global and Sycamore Africa. Both are foundations on a mission to address issues around education and entrepreneurship and how that affects prosperity. So this is me saying welcome on behalf of myself and my partner on this, that's Mr. Kunle Junadu, and I hope we're going to have an amazing session. So we're going to start right immediately so that we can stay right on time, since we are going to be having panel 2 at exactly 1:30, so we have a schedule. But I would like to also introduce right now our moderator for this panel session, who happens to also be a panelist also here. His name is Dr. Lumuwa Oludayo. He's an experienced leader who has started a company called Nathan Leadsgate, a consulting company, an HR expert and consultant, has served as registrar at Covenant University and has a mass fellowship of persons that he had been mentoring for years. So I would like us all to acknowledge as I welcome right now Dr. Lumuwa Oludayo as he takes up and go ahead with his session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen Oluwatobi. I want to appreciate you for the privilege given to me and the panelists to be able to share from your platform today. Thank you also to Sycamore, Mr. Kunle Jinodu. So thank you very much. So hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Everyone, can you hear me? Hello. If you can hear me, say hello, or you just wave.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Hello.
Hear me. Great. So on behalf of EduStart and Sycamore Africa, we warmly welcome you all to the first virtual session of Rethinking Education, Jobs and Prosperity in this first panel session titled Value and Mindset Reorientation. We hope you and your loved ones are doing well during this pandemic. Some nations have completely locked down. Some have eased the lockdown. Some have returned to work. But we hope you're fine, you're staying safe, and by technology, you're experiencing and observing social and physical distancing. Okay? My name is Muyiwa Oludayo. Like Stephen mentioned earlier on, I'm the principal consultant at Nathan Lidgate Limited. I am also a research fellow at the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. And I will be your moderator for this session. Just before we go into the details and then the details of the personality of the panelists that we have here, very intimidating panelists anyway. Here are some quick tips and rules that we will be following to facilitate today's discussion. Number one, I need to let everyone know that this event is being recorded and the essence is for reference purposes so that you all and those who are not able to participate here today can come back to glean knowledge and insights from the things that we must have discussed and ideas that we must have churned out from this platform. Talking about your microphone, I want to appeal to all the participants. I'm sure you can see that you're on mute. Only the speakers, the panelists will be able to speak. And should you become a speaker, or if you're a speaker, I mean for our panelists, or should you as one of the participants become a speaker during the event, please make sure you unmute yourself so that you can speak. And then when you're done speaking, you can then mute yourself again by clicking the appropriate button. And for the purpose of this interaction today, we want you to please use the chat box on the right side of this of your frame. If you look at the right side of the frame that you're interacting with, please use the chat room there, the chat box there, to ask your questions and participate in the conversation. Because we're in the world of technology and things travel very fast, we're going to be engaging social media.
Interrupt you a bit, Dr. Ludayo. Just
Right,
for easy management of the questions, there's a button there called Q&A. The participants can use that.
Okay, that's Q&A at the bottom of the screen. There's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen. So if you're asking your questions, please use the Q&A button. But you can chat conversations generally by introducing yourselves in the chat room there. But for the purpose of question and answer, kindly use the Q&A button. I think that helps. Thank you very much. So for social media, please share your thoughts and most striking ideas from this conversation. You can use the hashtag Rethinking Education. Our team at EduStart and Sycamore will collate all the ideas as part of our final report to be sent out to all participants and partners. So help us get the conversation going by using the hashtag Rethinking Education. Great. I hope this is clear to everyone. Hello, is this clear?
It's clear. Thank you very much.
Very well. So if you have any questions, you can ask them directly using the Q&A. As you're just joining, you can just share your name with us and what you do in the chat room. So before we get started with our discussion today, allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists. I'm going to give them a minute each after I make the top level description of who they are, and then they can add extra introduction to themselves afterwards. Maybe I will do that when they answer the first set of questions. So we have on this panel today, Chiamaka Indika. I mean, if you were physically present, Chiamaka, you know you'll be standing up right now for me to read your citation. So, but wherever you are, just know that all attention is on you right now. Chiamaka is a regional manager, Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship for West and Southern Africa. Chiamaka is super passionate about work and life skills and she regularly speaks on these topics. Chiamaka, you're welcome. I'll allow you to speak when I ask you the first set of questions. But can I hear your name and hear your voice? Chiamaka, are you here?
Hey.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Trust I am standing up right now in my house.
Okay, I can see you in the inner eye, all right?
Yes.
So the second
Thank you very much,
panelist.
everyone. Happy to be here.
Thank you, welcome, thank you. The second panelist is Femi Taiwo. Femi Taiwo is Executive Director at Leap Africa. Before Leap, Femi is the founding director at the Eagles Hope Foundation. Femi has had over 10 years experience in creating transformational programs for young people all across Africa. Femi, just say welcome to everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Ludayo.
The next person I'm going to be introducing is someone I've known for a long time, not personally. I'm not sure he knows me personally. If he does, that'll be a very great miracle for me. But it's someone I've followed his trajectory and followed the things that he's done over the past years. Mr. Gbenga Sheson. Mr. Gbenga is Executive Director at Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights in Africa, and leading the growth and expansion of a youth-led social enterprise with focus on connecting underserved youth with ICT-enabled opportunities. I mean, Gbenga has been talking ICT before the whole world jumped on it. Gbenga, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone.
So do you know me?
I know you for the purposes of today's call.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You saved my face. You just saved my face. All right. Then next we have Eniola Ladapo. Eniola is the Associate Director, HR Operations at IHS Towers. Before this, Eniola had been the head of Organization Effectiveness and Engagement at 9Mobile. Eniola leads talent acquisition and people analytics, amongst other things it does at IHS. Eniola, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Luda. Great to be here and in the company of the other panelists. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Eniola. And finally, on this panel is Dr. Myro Mandara. Dr. Myro is a senior fellow at the Children's Investments Fund Foundation, a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist with extensive knowledge of public health systems and managing maternal and child health programs in Nigeria. Previously, she served as a country representative to Nigeria for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I can tell you, Dr. Myro is passionate about girls and young people in general, and maybe particularly in Northern Nigeria. Dr. Myro, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
All right, so we are ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts and let's go now. We shall be cruising on an altitude of, I don't know, but open up your hearts for the insights that'll be coming up from this platform. So right now, our panelists will share ideas and lessons from their experience in building programs for young people across Africa. And so all of you have done one or two things with young people across the continent of Africa. I would like you to please share your general experience about building programs for young people in Africa in about a minute or so. So please note that we have two parts for today's session. So we will kick off with the introductory questions after your general opening, and then we'll follow up some of these questions. And afterwards, the audience can join the conversation. And so let's get right into it. Let's start with you, Mr. Gbenga Sheson. Tell us a bit about your experience building programs for young people across Africa, just in a minute. And you may say some more about yourself if I've skipped anything.
Okay, so I think I should start with what we started with. I think this is one of the most important things about building programs. It's making sure you build the program that people need, not just building a program that is either popular or that you're biased about. And I say this because don't forget that we all come from a place of power when we're about to build programs. So the natural temptation is for you to solve the problems in your head, the problems that you assume that young people have. But one of the advantages of how we started was that in the communities that we started working in, we had a baseline study and we got feedback. Based on that feedback, we were then able to build a program that took advantage of our skills, but also solved the problem that we were trying to solve. Because I'm sure we've all heard about situations where people have solutions that are looking for problems. But what we need to do is to build solutions that address existing problems. And I think the second important thing, since I have a minute, is to make sure that we build modular programs. And I'll give a very practical example. We started training at Jegunle in a small program in a cyber cafe in 2007. After we trained on tech, we realized that, hey, wait a second, what do they do when they finish? So we introduced an internship layer to the training. After people went on internship and some people started, having problems with interviews, we introduced life skills. After they got life skills and went for the interviews and had the skills and got the job, they were earning money. And some of them either became rude to, parents, or other people became arrogant or didn't know how to manage money. So we introduced financial management into the program. So when you hear that our program is called LIFE today, LIFE meaning L for life skills, I for ICTs, L for financial readiness, E for entrepreneurship. And when we realized there were not enough jobs, we started talking a bit about entrepreneurship to them. So this is modular and seeks to solve a problem in society where we are in, not a temptation to build based on our own assumptions. And since I have a minute, I'll stop there for now. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I mean, I like it, and I like the case study you mentioned and how you've been progressive about it. I mean, that's very inspiring. Mr. Femi Taiwo, do you want to say a few things about how you have been involved in building programs for young people across Africa and your various experiences?
All right. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to draw on what Benga Session started. In my experience and in the work I've done so far, I think primarily in Oak Foundation and in Leap Africa, one commonality I would say is helping young people to realize their agency, their voice, and equipping them to basically maximize and utilize their voice and agency. So in our work in Leap Africa right now, we're very big on personal mastery, on values, on fundamental foundational life skills, helping them to, so our courses, our module starts with a journey of discovering self, discovering their skills, their strengths, their aspirations, clarifying their aspirations, articulating their values, defining what they want for themselves, so all this from program design to implementation to post-program, it's for youth by youth with youth, basically. And I found that to be very, very useful. Also, I reflect back to the work we did in City and we do in City in Hope Foundation right now, Catch and Inspire Them Young. The foundation of that was Nigeria, for instance, and most of Africa. Africa is the youngest continent. Nigeria has a median age of 18, 17.9 to 18, thereabout. If we want to secure the future, we should invest in that demography. So, and what do we need to invest in? We need to invest in skills. We need to invest in values, in ethics. We need to invest in realizing their voice and their agency and giving them a platform to demonstrate and deploy their agency and their skills. So that's what my work has been about, majorly. But it has now transcended to now enabling other youth-led organizations who are trying to solve problems for young people on the continent. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Femi. So you have gone beyond facilitating transformation for individuals. Now you're going facilitating transformation for organizations. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chiamaka, let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. What have you been involved in? Your experience in building programs for young people across Africa?
Right. Okay. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Thank you. So I'm a development professional, like you've already outlined. I work in the youth capacity development space, pretty much like my co-panelists. And what that entails basically is helping the scholars, people who we work with, people who have gone through the scholarships program I'm currently working on, to actualize those development goals that they set out to achieve when they applied for their scholarships. So essentially, I build communities of like-minded young people who seek to contribute their own value, their own potential to national development. And as Mr. Chesson has outlined, we also build on the work that has been done previously. So on one hand, they start out doing charitable work, but then when we find that there's a gap in delivery, for example, it's not enough charity is great, but it's not sustainable. So what do we do following that? Well, it means we have to engage certain other people who make the policies, who make the change. And so we equip them with the skills that they need, teach them how to advocate for themselves, also empowering them with the tools that they need to be able to facilitate those conversations with the people who make the change. So basically, we're building them up as agents of change, and then facilitating their connection with those change makers. Another program I have had the privilege of supporting or leading on is a program which builds up the emerging policy leaders of the world. So we select individuals with potential to make significant changes in the future and the future of their country. We look at people who are already working in the policy space, people who are already working in the social development space, because we believe that the change has to come from the bottom. And it can come from anywhere, really, not just from the bottom up, but also people using their influence positively. So we pick these people with the potential, and then we take them on professional development programs to the UK or other exchange programs where they're able to enhance their skills. And then we more or less track their progress from there to make sure that, it wasn't just an exercise where people, we took people to the UK and they came back, but then we're also able to report on the positive developments that they have brought about in their space. So I think I will talk more on that as we go along. But that's my 1 minute.
Thank you, Chiamaka. Thank you. I hear about charity is not good enough. It's good, but not good enough. I mean, that's a very strong statement you made there. Dr. Myro, can we get your insights on work with young people so far? What's been your experience like?
Thank you very much. I'm sure many people will be intrigued that being a surgeon, an obstetrician, gynecologist, and a public health physician, what am I doing in the space of education or young people at that? And so the other bit about me is that I'm an African feminist and I'm also a social activist. So I'm a social justice activist. And the work I've done so far with young people anchors around creating social change through addressing root causes of problems. And it stems from my experience as an obstetrician gynecologist teaching and practicing obstetrics. And I saw a lot of things that you guys might have all heard about, things like vesicovaginal fistulae and so on and so forth. And the main reason for a lot of the maternal and child health issues across Africa actually is as a result of level of education of the girl, the woman. So completion of secondary school has been found to be the first step where you start getting a change in maternal and child health. And so therefore our focus for the last 23 years actually trying to address root causes of problems. So what we've done is to actually go to very rural areas, and that's why my work has for a long time been anchored in northern Nigeria, and now we're working across Africa and in particular Ethiopia. So we're looking at where there are large numbers of girls affected. So what we do is we go to very rural areas where there are hardly any girls in secondary school, and we get them from about primary six, get them scholarship, mentor them, see them through until they finish secondary school. And our idea is that by their finishing secondary school, they would have gone to age about 19, and they would have had also personal development and definition of self. So therefore, you first reduce early marriage and all the complications of maternal and child health. You empower the girls to be able to know who they are and to also create their own, to be grounded in their humanity. Every girl is primarily a human being, and then she's secondarily a girl. And my experience working with young people now across Africa, and I also involved in the mentorship of young people from the ages of 20 to about 35. That would give you a sense of my age. And what we found that's really important is the need for co-creation from the perspective of the people you're trying to serve. And then secondly, mentorship. For me, there's nothing like mentorship. Mentorship that comes along with social responsibility. So for example, for every girl we put on scholarship, she also has a responsibility to mentor 5 little children in her community, either her brothers and sisters. And the deep thing I've been involved in the last couple of years in Nigeria is actually getting girls in Northeast Nigeria that have been taken out of school by Boko Haram and making sure that they finish secondary school. So for the period of when Boko Haram was at its height, we used to take them out to Kaduna, to Kano, to Plateau, to Katsina to go and finish secondary school. And now that Boko Haram is a bit quiet, we're setting up a girls' academy in Maiduguri, and we're starting with about 300 girls this year. So our vision in girl child concerns is actually after all the drama of Boko Haram is over, we would have a Boko Haram area that have super educated girls. And I think there's nothing better than defeating Boko Haram in that way. And then across Africa, we're running a campaign called Keeping Girls in School. And many of you must have seen me running the campaign in Twitter. And the whole aim of the campaign is to ensure every girl completes secondary school. And there's a big chunk of responsibility for the young people in there. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a huge bit of work you're doing there, and amazing. I mean, we wish you well in your endeavors. Eniola, can we have your thoughts, please, on what you've been doing and
Okay.
your interest?
Thanks.
Just about it.
Yeah, sure. So can you hear me?
Very well.
My work in this area has really been working with others, building on the work already done and extending such work, primarily within an organizational context. The biggest challenge that youths face in Nigeria today, and I think that's symptomatic of the situation in most African countries, is the employability challenge. We've got post-secondary institutions churning out graduates, but at the interface between those graduates and prospective employers, the feedback a lot of those graduates here or that organizations say a lot about is the fact that these people don't have the skills that are required. So a lot of my work in this area really has been working within my organizational context to see how can we improve levels of skills acquisition and development within the ecosystem in which we operate. And it's not necessarily a selfish agenda, because one thing that is becoming increasingly apparent to us really is that when we invest in graduate trainee programs, we must invest with a surplus mindset. And what that essentially means really is we should invest in training more than our organization needs, because that way you are contributing additional talents to other players within your sector, within your ecosystem, who also need those skills. And that's exactly what we are doing right now. We've got programs that are designed to bring young, bright talent into the organization, expose them to hands-on, workplace-focused development. Some of it focused on engineering, and others focused on, mainly business and support areas. And we've deliberately designed the program, especially the engineering dimension of the program, to ensure that we do have more than we actually need, because there are other people who work with us, vendors, for instance, who also need those skills. And we don't see any loss to us when we avail those other players some of the talents that we've invested some of our resources in.
Thank you, Eniola. I mean, I like the fact that you spoke to working from within, and for you, you're on the demand side of seeing the potentials and the capacities of these people, while a few members of this panel are on the supply side, helping to get people equipped for the world of work, and you're readily seeing how they fit and how you can maximize them. I mean, thank you very much. I will go back to you, Chiamaka, and I'll be posing this question to you, as well as to Dr. Myro and Mr. Femi Taiwo. Three of you, I'd like you to please help address. If you have to set up a post-secondary education in Nigeria today, knowing that many of the people that you want to drive into this project are out of homes, are economically impoverished, their value system is skewed, and they live in an environment where they've not found so much love, and they've not found true care for them. How then would you design a post-secondary education in Nigeria today from your own experience or the things that you've done before? Let me start with Chiamaka.
Thank you very much for that question. It's really interesting you should start with me, because this is actually, this goes back to my foundation, as it were. As a final year student at the University of Ibadan, I actually put together a workshop along with some of my colleagues, final year colleagues at the time. We called it Wake Up and Smell the Coffee. And the point of that little exercise was the realization that a lot of our peers were really not ready for life after school. A lot of them had not yet realized what it meant to be independent on their own. I, on the other hand, I had had a lot of experience doing odd jobs during school. I did a lot of sales work during breaks. I also had a job as a research assistant for one of my professors. So I had built some skills. I had built some entrepreneurial skills. I had also equipped myself with knowledge, necessary knowledge for the workplace. So I had Microsoft Office skills. I had abilities, soft skills like customer service, because I had worked in sales. I had worked as a hostess at events. So it was very easy for my colleague to see me as someone who was ready for the outside world, because I already had a very forward-thinking mindset. I was thinking of the next big thing, the next way to make an income. And he figured that a lot of our peers were not ready the same way I was ready, because I always said, look, this place is wasting my time. I have things to do. Not to say that I didn't gain an education. I did finish second in my class. But the point is that I knew that it was bigger than that. So the point of the workshop we organized over 2 days was to, on one hand, help prepare those who were ready for the workplace, or who were inclined to go and work in the workplace, to begin to acquire those skills, begin to open their mind to further development, further education. And it was in things like CV writing and formal writing, email business writing and reporting and communication and things like that, because those were not necessarily the sorts of things we were exposed to within our academic context. And on the other second day, we invited people like celebrities and photographers, people who were, because as at the time, I'm talking about the late noughties here, those fields, the entertainment industry was still new and it was still growing. And we knew that there were people who were not looking for conventional jobs to go and sit at, but they needed to be able to learn how to earn an income from other, when I say non-conventional, I mean obviously not white collar, but more creative industries. We're talking about fashion, hairdressing, entertainment, basically. So it wasn't enough to just have those skills, but we also recognized the importance of helping people access the other side of it, the business side of it. And in that, with that understanding, it's first of all understanding what the gaps are. So just to answer your question, first of all, it starts with understanding what the gaps are. A lot of the time, our curriculum is focused on learning to pass exams. But we really should be learning, and this is, I think, one appreciation educators have for COVID-19, because now it seems like the rhetoric is that the focus should be on learning as opposed to testing, studying to pass tests and things. So it's also the fact that mindsets are shifting in terms of what qualifies as education. People are opening their minds to understanding that education can come in so many different forms, beyond sitting in front of a computer and interacting with a teacher. There's also learning other skills like crafts and home economics and cooking and baking and all the analytical skills that go into those activities. And it's now being appreciated as a form of learning. So why did we leave this out? That's the question we need to start with. Why did we leave that out? Because I know when I was growing up, coming up in the secondary school system here in Nigeria, those were a core part of our education. And I believe to a great extent, it informed the kind of person I am today and the kind of person that, you know, coming from my generation as well, that we see in the workplace, the fact that they have the ability to think, they're more analytical, they're able to think on their feet, they're able to be a lot more adaptable to situations. And those are the skills that we want to build in a future generation of people. We want them to be able to integrate into a workplace. We want them to be adapt to any situation that they find themselves. And we also want them to think outside the box of a conventional workplace and work setting. So in terms of a post-secondary education, I know that there's a role that a lot of the technical boards and technical agencies have to play in equipping people with vocational skills. A lot of the people you have outlined, yes, they have that maybe failing mindsets. I know the audience, you talked about 1 million boys and et cetera and so on. But I do believe this is because of where they are coming from and the value systems in those places. If the value system is all about survival, then all they're thinking about is survival. They're not really thinking about how they're going to get into a big workplace, because at that point they're just looking for the next meal to eat. They're not really looking broadly and looking beyond their current situation. They're just thinking of survival. So I think we need to start from the bottom, as it were. Because I've come from a place of, obviously, it would sound like I'm speaking from a place of privilege, knowing that that's not necessarily my background. But we need to go to that base and understand why that is the way it is, because you still hear stories of someone who, a youth copper who posts a picture of their mother frying akara by the roadside. But then the point is that parents, even as poor as they are, still understood the value of education and supporting their child to succeeding. So I think that's where we need to find where that value system broke, where education is important, but not just to pass tests, but actually to acquire skills to better one's life.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I like the fact that you took the challenge for your colleagues when it didn't look like they had a definite plan, and I think it's a good input for peer mentoring as we redesign post education systems. Peer mentoring will work because there are some people who will join us in our schools, our various learning environments, without not coming from the same background, with diverse perspectives. Some will not have empowering perspectives that can enable them take charge of opportunities ahead of them. And peer mentoring system infused into our post-secondary education would be a worthwhile addition. So let me hear from you, Femi Taiwo. If you had to redesign the post-secondary education, what are those elements that you want to put in? What are those things that you want to put in right now to see changes?
Okay, thank you for the question. So let me just do a caveat. First of all, if I had all the opportunity of effecting a change, I would have started from secondary school. I mean, right now in Leap Africa, for all the problems and issues you described, that's the reason why we've decided that one of the major aspirations we're putting ourselves into for the next 5 years is to strive to make secondary education work for young people. So many of the problems you're seeing, we are seeing it in secondary schools across the country, and not just in the country. We're seeing it in Tamale in Ghana, we're seeing it in places in Kenya, similar issues, right? So, but I mean, back to your question, if I was to design, assuming we have all these people come out of school and they are the Malians, you know, they lack skills, they lack values and all that you've described, what will I do? First is recognizing that these young people are objects of the socialization they've received over the years. They've received the form of the education they've received is what has brought them to that point. And by education, I don't necessarily mean what happens in the four walls of a classroom. Education is an influence on the mind. You know, it's an orientation. So they've received some form of education, whether through they didn't consider them mentors, but they were mentors, role models that they were seeing, and the messages they were receiving, the media, the pop culture they were open to and exposed to, basically. So if we're going to course correct it, we are going to recognize that these people have very low self-awareness and self-confidence. They probably will be lacking soft skills. I'm saying this because we've done series of needs assessments and we work in this space. So I'm just kind of saying this. Obviously, we'll do a proper needs assessment, needs validation, but I'm just throwing these as assumptions in the air right now. Of course, they probably lack add skills or transferable skills, technical skills that they can use to fend for themselves. They are coming from poverty. They've been used to poverty, like you described. They have all manner of vices, drug abuse, and are given to all manner of other vices. And you probably will see a bit of sexual and reproductive health challenges also. And you see that they are at loggerheads with society because the society has not enabled or helped them. So what kind of model will I propose? Given the understanding that I have also that we can't create enough universities, or we don't have enough universities. I mean, in most parts of Africa, only 1 in 4 people get to go to university. And it varies from country to country. So what I would propose is a dual educational system, a dual educational model for this group of people. Something similar, of course, but adaptive to what we need here, something similar that is being run in Germany and Switzerland. And the model, I mean, I think within 3 years, we can have a transformative effect in the lives of these young people. So it's going to have two approaches, like every dual education. It's going to have the kind of formal education, and it's going to have the work placements, right? So
formal education and what?
It's going to have the formal classroom styled education where you're trying to train them on some technical skills, soft skills, and what have you. But it's going to have work placement, the work readiness skills, throw them into the world of work almost immediately, right? So the first is that we have to design programs that would try to re-socialize or positively socialize them. So we would have to invest into modules and trainings that would help correct, the issues around self-awareness, self-confidence, help them to develop positive values. So, there's a concept we call positive youth development, holistic positive youth development in the youth development space. So we would be helping them to realize their voice, their agency, drop bad habits. Now, the best way to do this is through mentoring. It's through mentoring and experiential learning. So the formal side of the schooling would take the place of experiential learning, active mentoring. So those are some of the major components that will be there. And of course, we will skill them up in some generic skills. I think digital skills is extremely valuable for any of them, irrespective of whatever industry. But by the time they're entering the second year of this dual education, we would be exposing them to economic pathways. So, I mean, they would have gone through the journey to try to understand what obtains out there, and they will have to make a choice at a particular point to choose between some economic pathways. Also, because this is also what I've done, and we are doing right now with some partners. In Nigeria, some of the major areas where jobs can be created or even self-employment can be realized is in the creatives, is in agriculture, in tech, in service industry. So apart from other areas and other pathways that we will define, I will prioritize these areas, creatives. And creatives encapsulate everything from music, video editing, graphics design, fashion designing, everything around that line. Agriculture across the entire value chain. Tech, of course, across tech is quite broad. There are different areas we can skill them up in, and of course, service industry is also growing in Nigeria and will continue to grow. So, what I'm recommending is that we would have to upskill them with soft skills, help them to transform their mind, help transform and re-engineer their mind and their thinking, and correct the abuses they've had over the years, while we're also skilling them with soft skills. Other soft skills like critical thinking, problem solving, through proper experiential learning, and we allow them to work in the world of work. So sort of like a dual system that allows for apprenticeship and physical work. And if I'm to prioritize, I would say 40% on the general education, 60% should happen in the world of work. So for that to happen, obviously we will need tri-sector partnership. We will need government for policy. So I've been doing a bit of studying on the dual educational system, and all hands are on deck, basically. We will need private sector to be incentivized to create placement opportunities. We will need to standardize even the training across these trades, so that it's not different, it's not based on the seriousness of an employer or the other. And another thing that we found to be very useful to kind of reform young people in LEAP Africa is to channel their agency towards solving problems for other people. So one common element that will run across the entire programming will be community service. So that community service for us is an experiential way to, if you're trying to solve problems in a community, you're working in teams, you're developing your communication skills, you're thinking critically about the problems. So a major element of the experiential learning will be about solving problems in the community, solving problems for other young people. And what I'm describing is not theoretical. It's something we have piloted. It's something we've seen work. When maybe not too much towards the dual education. I mean, we had to work within the restriction of normal secondary schools, but we provided internship placements. But we've seen it really to be transformative. I mean, the child of the organizer going to go and intern in GT Bank headquarters. I mean, we had examples like that. Nobody in his family wears suits. Nobody, I mean, he had never entered lifts. He had never seen that much computers. That's as a way of shaping and reshaping aspirations, the values, and getting them to even embrace whatever you're telling them to do. Right. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, that's quite insightful, and evidently work is going on, and there's hope for us in Africa, based on what your team have been involved in with their partners. I particularly like the prioritization of the sectors where there is possibilities for the integration of these pathways. Thank you very much. Dr. Myro, you've been building schools. Tell us, if you had to build a post-secondary education, what will you do differently?
Thank you very much. And this question is so apt, because at the moment now we're working on creating 2 schools, the Girls Academy and also a skills acquisition center, both in Maiduguri, all in the in a leap to rebuild the northeast of Nigeria. Now, there are a number of things that are significant, that are important if one is going to build a post-secondary education. The first is, and which is central to everything that would happen, is actually value reorientation. Value reorientation, because as you premise in the kids, these young people are people who are coming, if you like, from disadvantaged positions. So therefore, they already have had at least 10, 15, 20 years of some value orientation, some mindset around this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do, this is for me, and this is not for me. So we need to crack that. We need to break that. And breaking that is not going to is not as easy as saying, and it comes along through a number of processes. So for me, first, in order to get children from that background to compete favorably post-secondary school, you need to get them up to speed on basic things. And I mean basic things: English, basic arithmetics, basic critical thinking, basic speaking skills, being able and confidence to even be able to go into a class, stand up and ask a question. For children, for my children and other children, this is given. But for this kind of children, it's not given. And I'll tell you a story. I was opportuned. You all remember during the Chibok girls, the first the Chibok girls abduction. The first escaped Chibok girls, there were 55 of them. And for a long time in this country, actually, there was a lot of accusation. The government didn't care. The governor didn't care. The girls were whatever. He still kept quiet because he had promised me he was going to keep quiet because it was part of a deal. And I have a lot of respect for him for keeping a deal for 3 years, 4 years actually, keeping quiet. For a politician, that's phenomenal. So when these girls were writing WAEC and they were abducted, and those 55 that were released, the governor called me and said, Mero, please, can you look after these 55 girls for me? I said, 55 Chibok girls? Do you want my own children to also be abducted? He said, please, I trust you can take care of these girls for me. So I came back, gave it a hard talk, and I went back to him and said, yes, I'll take care of these 55, but I do have one condition. And unless you can take that condition, I'm not going to accept them. He said, what is that? I said, you're not going to tell anybody that these 55 girls are with me. He signed up. So I took these 55 girls. Some were Christians, some were Muslims. For the Christians, we took them to a missionary school in Plateau. For the Christians, for the Muslims, we took them to a Muslim school in Katsina. That was the last resort. We tried taking them to any school to complete their school. Everywhere we went, parents said, if you accept these girls, we are going to take our children away. So finally, we resolved to take them to a missionary school. But even in the missionary schools and the Muslim and Christian missionary schools, we had to hide their identity. We just said they were girls from Borno, that school, because everybody knew schools were closed and because of the insurgency, so we're relocating them to these states. But the biggest shock for me was when we tested them for class placement, all of them were writing WAEC. None of them could write a paragraph in English. None could write a paragraph in English. And for all of them, we had to start, we took 6 months teaching them basic literacy. This is a girl. We took them primary 3 curriculum for 6 months. And then we leapfrog them to primary 6 curriculum. They use the first year learning just how to read and write and comprehend.
Wow.
And thereafter, they were on top of gear. And then we started senior secondary school curriculum. It took them 4 years to graduate from secondary school. And I can tell you that 4 of those girls now are in the university in America. And they're performing. One of them is topping their class. So,
Wow.
so for me, designing a post-secondary school education is actually creating a first year of remedial, and it's not the conventional remedial. If you like, a foundation class where you bring these children to a level that they will compete. Some of those Chibok girls were taken to American University in Yola. In the end, they couldn't do anything because they were taken to a class where some of the children were Tokumbo kids. Some were brought back from the UK or from the US by their parents to come to APTI, and they were in the same class with these children. It just didn't make sense. So for me, creating that space, and during that period of these girls that were doing this, we had they were literally in school all of the year, and during holidays we had boot camps. We call them now Bilkisu Yusuf Life Skills Boot Camps, where we bring all our scholars, all the girls on our scholarship, and we teach them about self-agency. They learned to be confident. They learned to define who they are. In fact, they learn such basic things as how to sit, grooming, how to sit straight as a lady, how to walk, how to speak with confidence, how to negotiate with your friends, how to go negotiate to say no to sex if you're not ready, how to use contraception, how to approach your parents and negotiate if they want to marry you early. So giving them what they need to compete, and then secondly, giving them what I call basic life skills to be able to navigate life itself. Now, within the first foundation year, these are the things I will focus on, giving them values. And subsequently, whatever curriculum or whatever they're going to learn, there's going to be something that is incorporated all through, and that is vocational skills. In Nigeria, in modern Nigeria, in everyday Nigeria now, particularly now with the COVID impact on fiscal space, there are no jobs to be employed. We need to get people to create their own jobs, to create their own spaces. So I will make vocational skill as a mandatory elective. Even if you're reading medicine, you're reading architecture, you're reading whatever you're reading in the university, you must have vocational skills that's mandatory. And we're piloting that in University of Borno State University now. It doesn't matter what you're reading, even if you're a lower student or whatever student you are, you must take a vocational skill. It might be you're learning to code. It might be you're learning to be a tailor. It might be you're learning to be a vulcanizer. You might be you're learning to be a programmer, but you must take some vocational skill that is compulsory, and you must have a certificate before you graduate. So you must finish and get the proper certification for that skill by whoever before you get your university degree. So these are some of the things. And as the previous speaker said, if I had my way, I would start this from primary school. And I'll tell you, I've experimented it with my daughter. My daughter at the age of 9 started making beads, like baby beads, and she started using pearls. By the time, and then her brother, who was 11 then, was supporting her. When he saw that she was the one like really gearing up, he also joined. And they were just going to the market. To date, I don't even know where they go to buy the beads. After 2, 3 months, the shop said they wanted the children to stay for a few hours in a day. So I asked the nanny to go and stay with them. And I can tell you, by the time they are 9, one was 9, the other was 11. The 11 one created their miniature website. And by the time they were 1 year into this job, the two of them had a profit of about 350,000 naira and $1,200 in profit. These are 9 and 11. And so for me, is a mindset.
Yes.
And this mindset cannot happen until we change the mindset of adults. Because these children don't decide for themselves. We adults, we parents decide for them. We need to have also a mindset.
Thank you, Dr. Myro. I mean, I'm impressed. I mean, there are many stories that we do not know the details of, and opportunities like this with silent actors and silent change agents help us to appreciate the work going on interventions. And talking about interventions, I'll switch now to Mr. Gbenga Sheson and Eniola. Pardon me. We need to have interventions in value reorientation. Mr. Sheson, Mr. Gbenga Sheson, you worked on it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Mr. Sheson, you worked on people, you work with people from the impoverished part of the world. And how did you succeed with mind shifts, with value reorientation? What people into the organizations? What internal fit activities did you also do? Did you engage in? Let's start with you, Mr. Gbenga.
Okay, thanks. I think I missed what you said for a second, but I heard much of it. So I'll start by saying what in every country we work in. So we say in Nigeria, we're now in 5 countries, but in all of the communities, there's one thing we find in common that will make any disadvantaged, or as we say internally, underserved young person change their lifestyle towards a trajectory that will get them towards meaningful livelihood and success and taking care of themselves and their families. That is modeling, role modeling. Now, unfortunately, the way education and life generally is structured at the moment is such that we train students in school, they learn languages, they learn English, in some of the countries they learn French, and they then use that to interact with the world. The world they interact with is one where what you say to them in theory is not what they hang on to. So for example, if some of our students are interacting, I'll give you a very practical example. Some of our students in the south of Nigeria, when you say to them about life skills, about hard work, about how you can become successful, and then in class one day, someone asked a question and said, but my uncle is a doctor. Everybody knows him. But the day they announced what a militant earns, my uncle said, maybe I'm in the wrong career. The uncle was joking, but that became the model for that child. So in class, we're teaching them that if you work hard, you will succeed. They look outside the window into the real life, and what they see is a politician, a corrupt one. What they see is something else that is, that is the exact opposite of what we're saying will make them work hard. So one of the things we've integrated in our program is role modeling. We bring back our students into the classroom.
Nice.
Our students from 2007 who are either now in, and this is what they love to see. So there's a student who then got on the Silicon Valley program and all that and came back into class, and everything she said, they were literally lapping it up, because as far as they're concerned, she's going to Silicon Valley. She got into this particular program. She got, the $100,000 and go in investment. They don't care many times about the process. They'll care much more about the outcome. It is our duty to put in front of them the kind of outcome they're looking for, and then make them realize that the process we're teaching can get you there. I'll give you a practical example. Many years ago, in 2000, 2001, I left school in 2000. I know that's a long time ago. Very. When I know, when I was leaving school, for you to work in an NGO, my friends called it Ungo, which, in Yoruba, go means stupid. So NGO, Ungo. And you had to be stupid to go work in an NGO, simply because many people worked in a non-profit because they couldn't get a job somewhere else. But I chose to do this because I'd seen an organization called Junior Achievement. I'd promised them I would invest 1 year of my time, which of course eventually became 6 years, before I then resigned and started Part-Time Initiative. But one thing that worked at that time for me was that when I joined Junior Achievement, I realized that my boss had an MBA from Harvard. And I was saying, wait a second, this is a model, right? This is a model I can see, I can relate with. She works in a nonprofit sector, and she has all the credentials of what I thought would have meant she had other options and will not take this one. So I think one of the things we have to build into our programs, if indeed we're making impact, we have to show the result to the students at the beginning of the process, because what they are focused on is, if I go through this process, would I have wasted my time, or will I be able to get to this place? And I know there's a big challenge in this, because when we design those programs and when we begin the programs, we're in a hurry to look for the results. But unfortunately, I mean, and I say this a bit easier now because we started 13 years ago. So over a 13-year period, we have a few more people who have gone through our programs and who we can demonstrate. For example, I'm also a product of a program by Junior Achievement called a Venture in Management and Enterprise Program, VIP. And so it's very easy for Junior Achievement then to bring me to a meeting to come and talk to participants at VIP and say that if you want to work in the nonprofit sector, have impact, build a respectable global career, then this is one of our students who went through this. So I think modeling is extremely important when we do this. And the other, which incidentally was the focus of the meeting I had earlier today, is shared successes. So many times when we design programs, we're tempted to want to build in the opportunity to take credit for everything that happens in the lives of the people we train. So for example, I would love to say that we trained Famous in Ajegunle, and Famous is now an assistant manager at one of the top 3 consulting firms in Nigeria, which he is. He has won innovation awards over the last 3 years. So Famous is our graduate and our product. That's true. But guess what? We're not the only people that contributed to Famous's success. And I think this is one of the things we need to learn when we build programs, that our input is not A plus B equals C. It's A plus B plus X equals C. A is the student, B is your input, C is the outcome. There's an X element, and that X element is one of the things that we kind of struggle with. It could be the environment. It could be other programs we introduce them to. It could even be the initiative by the student, because to be fair, students are different from students. There are students you would train on the same program, give them the same opportunities, expose them. They may even be twins and look alike and the same sex, but at the end of the day, one of them may excel more than the other, because there's something about personal drive that also contributes to this, and that goes into the X. But my point is, one of the ways we can influence that X factor is to bring back some of the products, even if not the products of our own programs, products of similar programs and similar processes, to say to them that, listen, yes, you've had a problem in your education. Yes, you've had a weak foundation, but this is someone who had a weak foundation. The entrepreneurship part of our program brings people in to come and talk to the students. And we never bring in the big names because, oh, this is the guy they will know is, has billions of dollars in an account. No, we bring in people who can demonstrate the outcome of a process, and better still, that they can relate with. Because the challenge modeling, by the way, is if you tell a child, and I know we all saw the picture of the African-American child who touched the hair of Barack Obama. Now, what was happening at that point was very simple. This was the child that had been told all his few years on earth, you can be anything you want to become. But of course, in reality, he knows that's not true. I can be anything. It's like telling, our children now that you can become anything you want to become. When they meet the reality of it, is that they need names, they need a few things and things like that. That child said, let me touch the hair, and saw that it's my kind of hair. It's kinky. It's African-American hair. So it means that this guy that I see on TV is someone like me. So I think it's important for us to combine these two elements and bring into our programs people that they can relate with, as close to them as possible, and that represents the process that will get them to the destination that we're describing to them. Otherwise, we're just engaging in a game of theory.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Benga. Role modeling and shared success that is relatable. I mean, that's some intervention, even as we reimagine a new education system, post-secondary schools. We're saying one of the challenges that we encounter is the values. The students are never the same, but in order to give all of them an opportunity to succeed, we must put before them role models, and we must tell the story such that we don't take all the glory. We must tell the stories so that we can let them see all the elements that come into it, which includes the effort of the students themselves, and then make sure that by the time we bring people before them, they can relate and they are not high-sounding people out there. So finally, from all the panelists, we're about to end this. We're going to the second part of this event. But before then, Eniola, how have you been able to manage internal fit in terms of mindset, mind shifts, people coming to the workplace? How do you manage their internal fit for the roles that they possibly have come into?
Thanks, Muyiwa. So I think businesses have a role to play when it comes to reorientating values in countries like Nigeria. Unfortunately, I don't feel that a lot of businesses understand that they have that kind of responsibility. If you look at a lot of businesses in Nigeria, there is not a lot of effort to connect the work they do with their purpose, right? And that's a gap that I feel is really missing in how a lot of corporations identify themselves. A corporation that is clear about its purpose, a corporation that is clear about how it contributes to the progress of society, even while it's being profitable, is one that is likely to, again, to pick up on the theme that Benga talked about, to role model the way that individuals themselves can also make positive contributions to society at their own levels. So the first thing that businesses need to get better at really is defining their purpose. When they are clear about their purpose, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to attract the kind of individuals or the kind of talent that they need. The other thing also is there's a reason why organizations have what you call corporate culture. And every culture, every organizational culture, every corporate culture is clearly founded on a core set of values. So one of the key ways in which organizations align individuals' motivations, values, and behaviors with their purpose is by leveraging their core set of values, by making sure that they're very clear on what those values mean to them, and also helping employees or people within the organization understand how they are supposed to apply those values at work on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Eniola. So your people ought to be, organizations have culture, and then we need to have culture champions within those organizations to ensure that as people come in, they become expressions of that culture. So we'll quickly move into the last part of this event, this panel session. I'll be taking questions. I like our panelists to look into the question and answer box. There are questions already for individuals. So, Eniola, there's a question for you from David. I hope you can see it. Mr. Benga, there's a question there for you as well. Dr. Myro, there's a question for you also. I would want you to please help attend to it. And Chiamaka, there's a question from Lanre Ojo, which talks about with 50% of our population aged 14, how do we ensure that in a decade or two, when they take over things, they are able to put us, the older generation, in check? So I'd like you to help me respond to these four of you. Femi Taiwo, there was a question for you, but you can help me take the second question by Lanre.
Let me take.
Pardon me, just a second, please. I will start with Eniola, then Mr. Gbenga, then Femi Taiwo, you take the third question there. And then Chiamaka, you help me take the fourth. And Dr. Mario, you help me take the last question. Please, I'd like you also to do this in 2 minutes or less. 2 minutes or less. Let's start with you, Eniola. 2 minutes or less.
Okay, so there's a question here around what sorts of character or values do I find recurring when providing skill and employability programs for young people. In terms of character, really, I would say that there are, broadly speaking, two of them. What sorts of character traits are we looking for in people? The first one really is around being open to learning, and that really encompasses a lot of indicators or attributes, if you want to put it that way. Openness to learning is really never being content with the level of knowledge that one has, constantly, finding ways of pushing the boundaries, constantly asking yourself, how do I apply what I'm learning? Every interaction in the workplace, every assignment, every responsibility that is given to you, you're constantly asking yourself, what do I learn from this? And then, taking the initiative to learn on your own, and also asking yourself, how do I apply what I've learned at work or outside of work on a day-to-day basis to be a valuable contributor to the organization? So that's the first thing, really being open to learning. And it takes a certain kind of mindset to be that open, to never believe that you know everything, and that every experience provides an opportunity to expand one's frontier of knowledge, so to speak. The second one really is around integrity. And integrity, when you hear integrity, people's default response is think, okay, this person doesn't steal or doesn't lie or whatever the case may be. That's true. That's one dimension of integrity. Another important dimension of integrity that people tend to miss out on, it's just simply, doing what you say, doing what you have committed to doing. So if, for instance, you tell someone that, look, by a certain time, I am going to deliver a certain task you've given to me, you make sure that you deliver it at that time. If you know you are going to fail at delivering it at that time, make an effort to get in touch with the person who is expecting that output from you, to explain that there might be a bit of a delay, and also let them understand why that delay is happening, and then make another commitment that you work towards achieving. And you will find that for a lot of people, that's a big challenge for them. They may not steal, they may not lie, which are the common examples of having integrity, but just simply committing to what you have, just simply delivering or doing what you've committed to doing can sometimes be a challenge for people. So for high flyers, really, that kind of integrity is also very important and valuable to organizations.
Thank you very much, Eniola. So I'll move to Mr. Gbenga, just in 2 minutes or less. Can you help take the question directed to you?
Okay, so which was easier, knowledge or the mindsets to implement? So at the very beginning, like I said, when I made my introductory remarks, we started something that then became, we had a model opportunity to build on it. So at the beginning, it was difficult because we didn't understand why we spent so much energy, hit our head against the brick wall, and these students were not getting it, right? So it was more difficult getting them to adopt the right mindset, but eventually we learned that one of the barriers to practicing what you teach in class is the atmosphere they go back into. So they come into the center, they learn everything they want to learn, they go back home, and the first thing that eats them at home is the reality of, their lived reality. So, but eventually what we then did was to build that element of attitude into the program. So as they learn, they also pick up the tools. They learn the tools that can help them implement even in difficult environments. So practically speaking, in our program, one of our team leads then introduced what was called, what we now call the diary session of Friday diaries, right? So students keep diaries from Monday to Friday, and on Friday they discuss their challenges during the week and their friends, not the teacher. Their friends then say, oh, this is how I handled it. And so there's a lot of peer learning going on. I think there is a lot of possibility for positive peer pressure in allowing beneficiaries to translate what they learned into their lived reality. When I know that none of my friends have given excuses and they do this, and I know that on Friday, I'm going to give examples. One day I want to be the one to respond, to say, oh, this is the way I handled it, and this is how we found it very useful. You have to incorporate their reality into their learning. Otherwise, you're just going to have, what we call our islands of sanity, which they then leave and then go to their own lived reality. But you need to bring both worlds together and give them the skills to navigate that tough environment. Guess what? That's what we do with our kids anyway. No matter how privileged the children are, you make sure they are ready for life, real life, not just the bubble.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we lost him there, I guess. Oh.
I think we lost our moderator.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to the third question. We're running out of time. Femi, if you can do this in 1 minute or less, the third question.
Okay, so the third question is, how can we be more deliberate with pushing moral values orientation on a large scale? So first is, I mean, if we really want to, if you want to mainstream values reorientation on a large scale and implement it on a large scale, we need government. So we have a national orientation agency, and they can play a huge role in doing this. I mean, what we've described through modeling and through storytelling as a way of passing across values can be done through the NOA, and the NOA can go through working with the social assets we already have. I mean, everyone in Nigeria is in 700 and something local governments. So, I mean, we can break it down that way. In all those 700 and something local governments, there are CBOs, faith-based organizations, there are CSOs, there are youth corps members. So how can we leverage all these social assets that already exist there as a way of passing across the national value and as a way of carrying out the modeling and what have you? A second one would be our society is, the values in our society is a function of the stories we tell. So storytelling is a crucial one. So the music, Nollywood has a part to play, mass media has a part to play, our journalists have a part to play. What stories are we elevating? I know, yes, we have corruption in the land, but are we celebrating those who are living and upholding the right values? Is our movies, celebrating them? How many movies have we had celebrating, entrepreneurship in the land or celebrating integrity in the land? It's always about one thing or the other. Same thing with the music. So, and finally, what we celebrate generally as a society and what we reprimand has a ripple effect on what people embrace as values, just like Benga Sheson said earlier. So I would say it's a matter of just scaling up what the stories we tell, scaling up the reorientation through agencies like the NOA and partnership with the third sector and civil society and other people, basically.
Thank you, Femi. I appreciate that. I want to give enough time to the other two panelists, ladies, to also answer this question in a minute or less. Chiamaka, you're next up.
Yes, I was just going to say, Femi, you have basically taken the words out of my mouth. And so I just don't repeat everything you've said, because that's exactly everything that I wanted to say. Our value system, first of all, I have to borrow from my other co-panelist, Dr. Murray, who talked about going all the way back to primary school. Absolutely. I believe that's really the foundation. We take the example of countries like Japan, where they don't have janitors in schools. It's the children who are responsible for cleaning the school, and that builds a sense of ownership and a sense of community within the school, as also a sense of responsibility for the common space, the common space that they use. So I believe that has a very strong role to play, starting from the young age. But then there's also something to be said about our existing institutions. Again, I look at the schools and the curriculum that is there. What is the value? Moral instructions used to be a big part of what we studied right from primary school. And the importance was the emphasis on being good for good's sake and not being good because, you know, there is some kind of eternal reward for it, but being good because it's good to be good. Then you'd have to look at what kind of values we are promoting as a nation, as a common people, and the stories that we're telling, the stories we're elevating. You believe what you believe is important. The values are really the things that you believe is important. So what are the values we're handing down to the next generation? And so back to what my co-panelists have said again, you have to look at the parents themselves. What are the values we're teaching the children in school? Are they do they have the enabling environment to practice it when they go back home, or will they be suffocated by whatever exists in their immediate space, that first socialization they get? So it's a bottom up and a top down approach, and then we all have to meet somewhere where we agree first of all on what our value system is. If at the core of it we have honesty and respect for each other, and respect for human life, and respect for common spaces and common properties, I think that's where we need to start from, redefining our value system and then using the existing institutions we have to push and promote these stories.
Thank you, Chiamaka. Thank you very much. Honesty and respect. Dr. Myro, in 1 minute or less.
Thank you very much. The question has to do with creating a remedial program, whether we do it from the scratch ourselves or we partner with others. Definitely the idea itself of the remedial class we're doing is kind of new. So what we do is we have the concept, but then we bring the pieces from experts. For example, for the remedial class we're starting up for the Girls Academy, for the first year of these 10 to 13-year-old girls, they're going to be learning only 4 subjects: literacy, numeracy, values, and IT. So for a whole year, this is all they're going to learn. So we're having to get an IT team to create a curriculum, to put in our curriculum based on the values, and they're learning literacy, numeracy, and values on IT, while they are learning also life and livelihood skills, market relevant skills. We're hoping they'll be learning how to make how to repair telephones, and they'll be learning how to code, and they'll be learning some beautician. So it's something that's originally ours, but we're having to get the experts to put this together into these. And the beauty of it is that all the people we work with to co-create these are young people, because we believe that the young programmers, the young whatever, are closer to these children that we're trying to serve. So they tend to relate with them better, and they actually go interact with them, get where they're coming from, and help build. And this also ties very, very closely to our principle of mentorship. For me, mentorship, mentorship, mentorship. And this is something that we all have to, I think we all have to imbibe. And you don't have to spend a kobo to mentor somebody. It might just be that you're mentoring a child whose mother is selling akara on the way, and your just own idea is to make sure, oh, have you gone to school today? What's happening with you? Hey, what's up? Give me 5, and make sure that that child feels that you're his world. You don't have to have a kobo, and we all have to take this responsibility. I call it 1 for 10. So each one of us, if each one of us can just help 10 other people, the world will be a much better place.
Thank you. 1 for 10. All right, distinguished panelists and members of this, all the attendees, I'd like to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be with you today. We've shared on value reorientation, and the summary of all our conversation has been that we should not give room to moral relativism or situational ethics. Everyone has a role to play. Model the right thing, live the right thing, and let's ensure that everyone is empowered to become what he or she has the capacity to become. So on behalf of all of us on this panel, it's me saying thank you for having us. Dr. Stephen, Mr. Akunle Jinodu, thank you for having us. God bless you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Deeply appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to all the attendees. Thank you so much. We'll now move on to the next panel. Thank you. Alabi?